Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to my rant channel. Well, alright, that being done, welcome back to the rant channel. We're gonna do things a little differently today with this video. Today is a holy day for a lot of, I guess, folks of the Judeo-Christian persuasion. And it's a very beautiful day here where I live, and that's why I decided this was going to take a slightly different direction than what I normally do with my rant videos. This discussion is going to have a, how can I say it, spiritual flavor to it, but I just want to clarify that I'm mostly, if not exclusively, speaking for the sake of conjecture. I'm just conjecturing here. I'm not reaffirming belief or faith or anything like that. This is purely a curious discussion. So that being said and out of the way, let's get started. Last night, had a very bizarre dream. Well, no, let me backtrack. So for the last couple weeks, I have been planning and drafting what I imagine would be a thorough route of exploring the Indian subcontinent. And I figured that one of the best ways to go about this was by tracing the route of one of their holiest pilgrimages in the Indian subcontinent, known as the Char Dham. You know, it starts in the coastal town of Puri in Odisha on the west coast, and then you go up into the Himalayas in a region called Uttarakhand, I think is how you pronounce it. And then you go eastwards, back down to the coast again, to the ancient city of Dwarka. And then going all the way down and finishing it up in the state of Tamil Nadu, in the city of Rameshwaram. So, that being said, that was something I was researching, and a few months ago I was pretty fixated studying what there was to do in the city of Puri, but now, I've moved past that, learned quite a bit, and now I've been focusing my studies on what there is and the history and the identity of the people who live in the area surrounding Badrinath. That's one of the temples that the pilgrimage consists of. That's the one that's in the Himalayas. And I found some pretty interesting things. I thought Puri was intriguing, to say the least, but Badrinath is a whole nother, let's call it a whole nother philosophical monster because of the events that took place there. So if you didn't know, Badrinath is a very ancient temple, and it was reestablished as we know it in modern times by a priest and holy man by the name of Adi Shankara. I believe he was of the Vaishnava tradition, and hence Badrinath is, dedicated to the worship of Lord Vishnu and his consort, Lakshmi, who in that region takes the name Badri. So Adi Shankara, when he reestablished the temple in Badrinath, the temple had been taken over by Chinese marauders, and inside the temple they established a Chinese animal god cult, and they worshipped in there. And Adi Shankara this I'm still researching this, but Adi Shankara went in there after the temple had been cleared of the invaders, and he destroyed their foreign idols and cleansed the temple and reinstated the rites that are supposed to take place, to like cleanse the space of whatever, the unwanted guests, if you will, had performed, within the temple grounds. And ever since then, those traditions remain as Adi Shankara had established them. And there's actually a prophecy, I don't know if you would call a prophecy that one day there will be an avalanche, a cataclysmic event in the Himalayas where the temple of Badrinath will be lost, I guess covered in snow. They imply that it's going to be the disappearance of the temple, and when that happens, then that means that man has attained oneness with God. So I think that's very interesting that they have that prophecy in place for a temple, for a place of worship where invaders had come in and disrupted the traditions and the spiritual balance that had existed there. Now, granted, I'm not entirely sure how old Badrinath was when it was taken over, but just so you get an idea, when Adi Shankara reestablished it, it was around the time of the Viking invasion, so 700s or so. So just to kind of put that into perspective of how old this place of worship really is. So, fast forward, I became a little fixated on trying to find out what had happened in Badrinath when the Chinese took over the temple. And I couldn't really find much information. And last night I had a very strange dream. I had a dream that someone talked to me and told me that if I really wanted to know what had happened in Badrinath, that they were going to show me. And so that's how the dream began. I saw a fortified town. To kind of give you an idea, something that looked kind of like Carcassonne in France, but with Asiatic motifs, we'll put in the architecture. And I saw a thriving town, people were working, people were, making things, leading productive lives. But the entire town was just filled with squalor and just filth. You could tell it was a very unequal, unjust society that lived there. And then this voice told me that these people here let their hearts be entirely consumed by greed. And in their greed, they poisoned their grain. Suddenly, I was in this kind of silo, and there was rice and barley, but all of it was covered in this white mold. And this voice told me that the people who lived here had been poisoned and consumed. Now, consumption, in historical context, consumption referred to tuberculosis. And, this voice said that these people in this town were poisoned and consumed. So then this voice proceeded to show me how these people were suffering from gastric distress and all sorts of other symptoms that you would chalk up to being poisoned by some kind of fungal agent, right? And then this is where I saw the consumption. People started coughing up blood. People were having difficulty breathing. They were dying. And I saw how some of the most arrogant people in the town, were just ravaged by combination of being poisoned from what they ate, and then bleeding out from what they were breathing. And that actually really scared me. I felt afraid, and this voice told me to not be afraid, that I was just seeing what had already occurred, and that no harm was gonna come to me because that harm had already been carried out. Now, obviously not very comforting words, but I went along with it. And after seeing how everyone died from consumption or poisoning, the town was completely empty. There was nothing left. And I could see how over the years it just got swallowed up by the mountains, amidst the rocks and the snow. And it was so up, so high up there. Who was ever going to go look for this place? So yeah, I was still feeling really weirded out. And the voice asked me if I wanted to see the cadavers of these people, and I said, no, obviously not. No. But the voice essentially told me that these people were the marauders that had established their animal god cult in the temple of Badrinath, and that the poisoning and consumption was their punishment for the defilement of the holy grounds. Very interesting. I don't know why I had that dream. Maybe I just got too fixated on what I was studying. Today is Easter for a lot of people. For others, it's, some kind of holy feast. I'm not going to get into details because, this video is already long enough as it is. But I think it's very interesting that time and time again, regardless of the religious tradition, there's always that event where an invading force comes in, defiles the sacred places, and after several years of oppression of the original religion, an ascetic, a holy man or woman, comes back into the picture and reestablishes the old traditions of the supreme God according to that faith. For example, you kind of have that whole thing going on in Abrahamic religions with the event of the Maccabees and Solomon's temple. You could even argue that the Crusades were similar events, the Christian incursion, going to Jerusalem to remove the current Muslim power that was enacted, right? Yes. So, and one could even argue that that's currently happening again with modern theologians versus the old school ones. You know, the new schools of thought versus the old schools of thought, and what that implies thereof. So I thought it was a very interesting dream to have on the eve before Easter. And since it is a beautiful spring day, I decided to come out and rant about that in my yard by the old abandoned chicken coop. Oh yeah, the abandoned chicken coop for this video, that's something else that I'm going to have to discuss. Speaking of religions, because a long time ago I found some creepy shit back here that made me think that whoever used to live here was into some unsavory stuff. You know, I know that seems random, but that does kind of have something to do with, you know, what I just said about sacred grounds and things you're not really supposed to be doing, at least in my opinion, you know, but that's why everyone's got free will. You can choose what you want to do, what's good for you and what's not good. That's what differentiates, at least that's what I've learned in the last week, that what differentiates us humans from animals is that we have what they call in Sanskrit buddhi, which means the ability to differentiate between right and wrong. Animals can't do that, but people can. And you know, when you put it like that, it does make me reconsider my actions on a day-to-day basis just a little bit more. And I at least want to publicly state that I would like to use my buddhi for good. So that being said, what are you guys going to use your buddhi for? Alright, well, I guess that's it for this one.